Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have another wonderful talk with someone we all know. As you can see, Lin Wells is going to give us an update on star tides. We have a number of interesting talks coming up and a few more in the pipeline. We're just working out dates and logistics that are not on this list. And I think we've decided that Lin Wells needs no introduction, so I'm just going to hand it right off to Lin and switch to his presentation.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to do something here with a moment. And yeah, so we have the star tides. Thank you very much for the opportunity. The proximate cause of this is that we're having our tech demo, our 15th annual capabilities demo coming up the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And just wanted to give people an update, not only of that, but also on the many exciting things that have been going on in star tides in the last couple of months. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Hey, Lin, before you go any further, can you tell me what star tides means as a name?
Sure. Okay. So this is interesting because the audio is starting to break up, and I'm not quite sure why. So star tides, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We said yes, and then now we can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah, the audio feedback from all of you is unintelligible, so I'm not quite sure why. So let me shut down some.
Perhaps we can all mute.
And
If that doesn't work, I could set up a cell phone relay with Lin and put it through my audio.
I'm sorry. Tell you what, I'm going to shut all this down.
Let me ask, since I'm presenting,
I'm actually going to log out and log back in again. I'll be right back.
Okay.
can everyone see the full screen of his first slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Chris, who's next on our, who's next 2 weeks from now? Who's on our hit parade? You're on mute.
It's Gary Bowles covering the next
fantastic.
rules of work.
So that's his new book, isn't it?
It is. And you
That's
know a
great.
little bit about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
No, I mean, I'm part of the way through the beginning. I think it's an interesting read, and that's why we invited him. He's been on our calls, you know, maybe 30% of the time, and so it's good to have a author in our midst. And then who's next? Sarah McHugh. Is that what I'm reading?
Yes, from World Quant University.
Actually, can I jump in about Gary Bowles? He was
Sure, Malin.
actually on our founding management team for the People-Centered Internet,
Cool.
2016 and 2017, some of it. So he's very much a core member of the People-Centered Internet.
That's great, Malin. That's something I was not aware of since I joined later. That's wonderful. And then we have Cindy Kuhn and Todd Hoskins. I'm going to talk about Global Help Desk and updates on that. I see Todd's on the call. Todd, any previews you want to provide about what's coming up early November.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, just a second, Lynn. Yeah, Todd?
Yes, a lot of new information since we last shared an update in July. So I think it'll be a fun, informative Sunday afternoon.
Well,
Or
looking
morning.
forward to- Yeah, we're looking forward to it, wherever you are in the world. Lynn, we're glad you're back. So
Yeah, sorry about that. So I heard the question about what is StarTides. So let's go to the next slide, please. So StarTides is a global knowledge sharing network that was begun in 2007 at National Defense University. And the original idea was transformative innovation for development and emergency support, was to look at ways that commercial off-the-shelf products could support Department of Defense missions. For example, stabilization operations, building partner nation capacity, domestic and foreign disaster relief, that kind of thing. So with that as background, from 2007 to 2015, it was at National Defense University. And then we moved over to George Mason University. But the TIDES portion of it, which remains a Defense Department program coordinated with the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. And it gives us the option of being then StarTides as the global knowledge sharing network, which is coordinated out of George Mason, as basically for those who don't want to affiliate with military type things. And then the TIDES project still allows us to do things like have exhibits in Pentagon Center Court and coordinate with the Joint Interagency Fields activities at Naval Postgraduate School and that. So the combination of StarTides and TIDES is about global knowledge sharing network. There's several thousand nodes ranging from universities in Asia to NGOs in Europe and Africa to US government. And it really is public-private whole of government transnational. So my apologies, I've talked about this so often I forget that some people are new to it. So please, any other questions about StarTides before we go on?
no, great summary.
Right now, the main focus.
Sorry, I actually do have a question.
Yeah, please.
When you say it's a knowledge sharing network, do you mean like it's a digital infrastructure? Is it a community of people? What is the actual sort of tangible thing that is StarTides?
Tangible thing is several thousand nodes, members, which can be individuals, can be companies, can be universities, can be NGOs. And the basic idea is these people have had typically experiences with each other over the years. Some being, we started with Cyclone Sidr in Bangladesh in 2007. And one of the issues there was there's a lot of commercial satellite imagery available that people couldn't get to. And so we worked with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the companies in order to get imagery released basically free of charge for anybody working on the disaster for the first 30 days, as long as it was just flat files, not full vector files. Later, we worked with Cyclone Nargis in Myanmar, then with Haiti earthquake, which was a major break point for us, at least, in dealing with open source geospatial, open street maps, community crisis mapping. Then Fukushima in Japan in 2011, the Superstorm Sandy in 2012, and so on and so forth. So an example, plus the various things in Iraq and Afghanistan and that. So one example of how this works is that in 2017, 18 or so, the government of Iraq came to us and said that we, government of Iraq, would like to use StarTides expertise to focus on refugee and IDP camps, internally displaced persons, between Baghdad and Basra. And so we said, okay, went out the network, and in a week had 80 people who said, yeah, I'd like to play on that. And so we went back, and some said, yeah, I served in Iraq, I'd like to go back. Some said, I've got technology I'd like to sell. Some said, I'm just interested in the topic. I went back to the Iraqis and said, okay, this is what we have, but this has to be an Iraqi pull rather than a StarTides push. So let us know, because everything we do is focused on bottom-up capacity building and trying to do it in ways that leave the community we work with better capability than they had before we started, and that they can sustain by themselves. So the Iraqis, it turned out, never got their act together and never designated a point of contact or a team, but that's kind of the capability of the network. The one other point I'll make is about 2020, 2019, I guess, we began to get interested in rural broadband. I went out and said, who's interested in rural broadband? And within, again, a few days, we had 29 people who said that they'd like to play. That stabilized at a pretty aggressive core of maybe 5 or 6, but it's also morphed into a lot of the capacity building, digital capacity building exercise I'll talk about now. So in essence, the network is a resource of people, organizations, companies, whatever, who can be brought together to focus on particular problems. The fact that it's now coordinated at George Mason through the Center for Resilient and Sustainable Communities gives it an ability to focus on individual community projects. One of the problems StarTide had over time was it was a group of people, whatever, who had common interests and be able to work together, but we didn't have a good way to focus it. And now that we have the CRASC at George Mason and also PCI, we have that ability to do the focus. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Other questions pending? I'll go on. So I want to talk today about some recent developments, what some of the advantages of engaging in various ways with StarTides are, and talk about the upcoming capabilities demo. Next. So one of the things that we've labored under for a while has been what kind of organizational structure do we want to pick for StarTides? And this is now Aaron Rose, who is well known to the PCI community, and to Lin, has been helping us think through this. He's in the Valley area in Seattle, entrepreneur, extensive international business experience. So we finally settled on, and we looked at things like, should we be a 501c3? Should we be a for-profit? Should we stay with George Mason? Whatever. So the structure we've picked, and I'll show you in a minute, is we'll basically stay being coordinated through George Mason and the Center for Resilient and Sustainable Communities. We have formed an advisory board, which gives it a structure to move forward without being so dependent on just 1 or 2 people. There's a revenue model being refined, which will be welcome. And we want to refocus our activities back towards what StarTide traditionally has done, which has been more operationally focused. I mentioned the national disaster. One of the very interesting things we did back in 2012 was we used to attend quarterly field activities out at Camp Roberts in Central California, near Paso Robles. And these are coordinated by the Naval Postgraduate School, and basically brought together civil military activities with companies and the government, whatever. And so one of the areas that was looked at that one was imagery, post-disaster imagery. And it turns out the Civil Air Patrol in the United States does a large amount of post-disaster photography. But their model had been to do about 3,500 feet above ground level, nadir-focused images, essentially right overhead of the damaged area, a steep bank covering that. And so they experimented with different models and found actually that given the amount of digital zoom that's now available in most cameras, that you could fly at 8,500 feet above ground level and take obliques that gave you multi-square mile images that could then be refined down through digital zoom. And in the months after August of 2012, the Civil Air Patrol actually refined their procedures to do that. And it turned out just in time for Superstorm Sandy. And so as soon as the clouds cleared over New Jersey, Superstorm Sandy, after Sandy, the Civil Air Patrol did this kind of imagery. And the FEMA basically said that this got them information days ahead of what they otherwise would have done. So just an example of how they interact with real world things. Now, I should say, when we were at Mason, or when we were at NDU, we had a staff of about 5 gubbies who were able to, full-time gubbies were able to work on this. And so one of the things we're trying to move back to now that we're in a conventional university environment is how to find the resources to do those sorts of things again. But that's what we want to move back to, with focus on thought leadership in areas of problem solving, and then developing solutions. For example, we just did a white paper on thinking through Puerto Rico. In support to research and real world activities, I mentioned rural broadband. In creating digital opportunities, we've been looking at the, we got a grant from the Internet Society Foundation, along with PCI, actually through PCI, on Tribal Resource Center, which is to look at helping tribes, particularly those in the Northwest right now initially, make digital better decisions regarding digital capabilities. And the first part of this is to listen, just shut up and listen to what the customer is trying to tell you that they want. And in this case, lots of times it's not one tribe fits all, one model fits all tribes. Some have fiber running through their reservations right next to a major highway. Others are in mountain valleys with no microwave shots even to the ridge line. And so how do you combine those? Again, the idea is to set up resources using the whole idea of the global help desk from PCI as a resource to help people make better decisions. In Virginia, we've been working on connected agriculture, again with rural broadband. Lots of places in Southern Virginia, the farmers have effectively no connectivity. And so this doesn't allow them to take advantage of all the things like connected tractors and GPS, precision ag and GPS focused database analysis, drones. So we've been looking at ways to enhance that. Very interesting work in areas like carbon credits. How can you rotate farmers' crops in ways that they'll be able to get better, perhaps get carbon credits when the laws come into place to use it. And we've also looked at urban communities. We were looking at a proposal which wasn't accepted, but we'll rebid in another situation for looking at Harlem and rural Puerto Rico and Stafford County, Virginia, in addition to the Native American communities. A lot of work going on with particularly under Maylin's guidance and Echar Palante, which is an NGO in Puerto Rico, on turning Puerto Rico into an enterprising island which embraces both innovation and change. It is a really, really, really exciting thing that's going on. And we just finished up working with the Hassel-Plattner Institute in Potsdam on a global design thinking workshop. So this is a very energetic and I think potentially valuable program. The other thing we're looking at consistently is resilience. The center at George Mason is the Center for Resilient and Sustainable Communities, CRASC. And one of its models is bottom-up community-led capacity development, so that when the grant ends, the students graduate, again, we've left them with something that's the community, where something gets sustained by itself. We're also looking at cyber resilience, and I like resilience a lot better than security, because security kind of implies hunkering down and locking things up to keep bad things from happening. The bad things are always going to happen. The resilience basically says we have the coping capacity to get through the disruption, but particularly we have the adaptability in order to move on and operate under the new normal. The model here is not to bounce back to where you were, but to bounce forward better. We're looking at expanding our international activities, doing a fair amount of work with Japan, which is doing some really excellent work in instrumenting particularly flooding ranges along riverbanks, and possibly the Philippines, which has some of the most innovative work anywhere on the use of drones in disaster relief. We're working now with Ateneo University near Manila on the use of backpack drones in order to allow communities, little neighborhoods, to be able to use the imagery and the cell phone connectivity and all this building of the drones, and say, the bridges are out here. We can't evacuate in a normal route. We need to go the other way. And so this is some very exciting work. Next slide, please. One of the things we've done is we've simplified our platform structure. Now, StarTides historically has worked around 6 main platforms, which used to have much longer names, but essentially it's energy, housing and related capabilities, water, which can also be water, sanitation, and hygiene, agriculture, which also is food security, information and communications technologies, and the ICT is the international term for IT, because communications is so much more important in much of the developing world than just IT. And finally, healthcare. And this is always the reason why the frying pan is there is from the beginning of StarTide, we've had a very strong emphasis on solar cooking, or at least low impact cooking, for example, high efficiency cook stoves and things like that. Trying to get away from, I'm not sure if I used to fly into Kabul in a bowl, and in winter when everybody's burning, who knows what, and their stoves, as you cross the lip of that bowl, the air turns charcoal, just charcoal gray. It's just really amazing what how much pollution is put into the air. And somebody told me yesterday that Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia is one of the worst places due to winter cooking. So anyway, there were things we can do out of that. For the first several years of StarTides tech demos, actually, well, whenever we've been doing the open field demos, which normally the events are, we've always cooked the meals for the people on the site using solar or high efficiency cook stove. So that's been a big part of the project. Next slide, please. So collaborative opportunities, one of the things we looked at in the advisory group development process was why do you want to be a member of this thing? Next slide. So the structure here, StarTides in the middle, is overseen by the Center for Resilient and Sustainable Communities at George Mason, but it has a very close tie with People-Centered Internet. In addition, I've got U.S. government over there on the left. It could be a broader picture, but the key part there is the Naval Postgraduate School, which, as I mentioned, oversees the TIDES part of the demonstration. And that's our link to allow us to, depending on demonstrations, to participate in Camp Roberts and things like that. Then we've set up the outside advisory group, and I'll talk in a minute about the collaborative opportunities for StarTides members. And then the deliverables on this is thought leadership, problem solving, and solution development. Next slide, please. So this lays out some of the opportunities available among StarTides members within the network. And when I talk to people about why they keep coming back to the tech demos, capabilities demos, the recurring reason is because I learned something from other people in the demos. For example, I didn't know that Fred was working on this. And so in the past year, he and I have formed some sort of a joint venture, and now we're going forward, and that kind of collaboration. So in this case, it just notionally shows that you're going to have obviously agriculture and water people talking together, and healthcare and water, and ICT and housing and energy and agriculture and so on and so forth. Our basic point here, and I owe a lot to Major General John Warden on this, is we try to think about collaborative, integrated, synchronized solutions across stovepipes. For example, if you were thinking about energy, okay, smart grid is going to be, fundamentally dependent on comms, but the comms are fundamentally dependent on power. So how do you tie those together? In addition, if you're in a place like Puerto Rico where the weather turns bad, disastrously bad, more often than you'd like, every time you have a road project, why don't you trench the road, bury the power lines and the fiber, that kind of thing. So the idea is lots of ways to do things well within stovepipes. How do we coordinate, synchronize, integrate across them? Then in addition, below these 6 areas of infrastructure are these keys to success: narrative and storytelling, one of the things we find all the time in StarTides is that you've got to get trusted interlocutors to work with. We've tried several occasions. We've gone down to Appalachia, we've gone to Puerto Rico, we've gone to Harlem, and have not taken the time to build the trusted interlocutors, and almost never works. So you've got to have the narrative and storytelling to understand, the stories that people you're dealing with. At the same time, it has to be systems thinking. StarTide is all about sharing knowledge. Obviously, need resources, education metrics, but then the things like finance, including fintech, including newly emerging insurtech, the technology around insurance, because getting a return on investment on resilience is really important with insurance perspective. And then the whole digital enabling technologies, open source geospatial and blockchain, or digital enabling technologies, and GIS, that sort of thing, are all parts of this. Next slide. So those are the capabilities within the network. Then in addition, you've got these kind of collaborative capabilities outside of it. If you're in the healthcare group, you can see there's concentric circles of public, private, transnational entities that also work in this area. And so you can form, if you will, clusters between your own healthcare and the different entities working in related fields. Next slide. And then finally, StarTides itself has a certain cachet, being a member. And so this lets you just look at the opportunities that come collectively to the network. I mentioned the Iraqi and the rural broadband that come just from being in the network. Next slide. And so what you have then, tying it together, is here's the center, and then tie the people-centered internet and the government links. And then you have, in addition to those, the inside StarTides, the outside StarTides, and the capability cluster approach. Next slide. So let me pause for a minute and ask any questions there before I go to the capabilities demo.
Anybody got any questions? I see the posts in chat, Pat. Will so if you want to jump in, Jeremy, you were about to say something.
Yes, when you talk about sort of the opportunities in the fields you mentioned, like rural broadband, what kind of opportunities are forthcoming?
So there is an enormous amount of money in rural broadband. It is really, I mean, the National Technology Innovation Agency, Information Agency, just did $1 billion solicitation on 980 million on expanding broadband connectivity in tribal lands. And it was open from June 1st to September 1st. So in 90 days, you had $1 billion out there and you can just imagine the feeding frenzy and the chum infested waters that this led to. And one of the points of the Tribal Resource Center is that people, the tribes, the recipients of these funds often do not know how to make good decisions. I mean, they become very vulnerable in these high pressure situations. Somebody coming in and says, yo, I got 100 megs down, 25 megs up, buy my system. And the point that we're trying to do through the ISOC grant and others is start by understanding what the problem is. What are the needs? What's the problem? Again, the design thinking model begins with empathize, which is listen and understand, then define a problem, then iterate to improve it, then prototype and test. And so the technology doesn't come in until about the third or fourth stage of this whole thing. So how do you begin by trying to figure this out? But then the next piece is the resources. Some of these grants are Department of Agriculture, some are FCC, some are state grants, some are Department of Energy. They all have different timelines. They all have different evaluation criteria. They all have different metrics. And so how do you how can you pull together a system where people can understand this? And so this is one of the things that we hope that the Global Help Desk model over time, as we refine it, can help with. So the first thing is there's a lot of money in rural broadband. But then other things spin off like connected agriculture. This is more than just precision ag, which is where you use the drones to guide the placement of fertilizers and water in the fields, but it's also basically applying big data to farming. And then when you get into the urban communities, lots of times plenty of broadband, very low take-up rates. And it's because we have not done a good job, or collectively, of articulating why this is important to people. Now, COVID has sort of helped bizarrely because it's taught people the importance of distance learning and telemedicine and the telework. But usually we find that if it's underserved communities, it's getting people to use it is almost like a voting registration campaign. You have to have people that they trust who are willing to go door to door and convince them why this is of value to them. And then really importantly, coming back to the ag, or coming back to the broadband, is very often there is no sustainability in all this. The funds are for getting the equipment, and then nobody's paying attention to the follow-on O&M, operation maintenance, sustainment, that. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to fold in things like local STEM educators to build cadres of young, enthusiastic people who can then become the advocates for this technology in their communities. So the role of broadband is just incredibly rich, and not only rich in terms of research and engagement, but also a lot of money. I would say, at any given time, there are hundreds of millions of dollars of grants out there, and probably over the course of a year, especially with the administration's priorities on this, it's going to be in the billions of dollars. Over.
Thanks.
Did you have another question?
I can follow up with it later.
Okay. So the demo, the tech demos began in 2007. And again, it was commercial off-the-shelf products applied to defense missions initially. Now we're focused a lot on resilience and building capacity, this kind of thing, and particularly supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. What kind of emerging technologies might be available in the next couple of years that could directly support the SDGs. The demos have in the past, up until 2 years ago, always been open field. We've never been indoors. And people say, well, what happens when it rains? The answer is it's disaster relief. Bring a poncho. We're interested in operational capabilities, not PowerPoint, not posters. Right? So the first day, Monday afternoon, 18th, from 4 to 6 in the afternoon, be introduced by President Washington of George Mason and Vice Admiral Rondo, who's the president of the Naval Postgraduate School. We've invited Dr. Homi Kalasi from Brookings to be our keynote. He actually literally helped to edit a book on the Sustainable Development Goals. And the focus of this year's project is on how you build sustainable resilience to promote the Sustainable Development Goals. So there'll be a panel, Transformative Technologies, chaired by Mei Lin. Thank you, Mei Lin. And that will be the first day. Next day, next slide. So then Tuesday and Wednesday, there will be two-hour sessions. In the morning from 10 to 12, in the afternoon from 2 to 4, followed by an opportunity for exhibitors to present. And the first panel on Tuesday will deal with energy. Ambassador Rich Kausler chairs the Center for Energy Security Policy at George Mason. Panel 2, Dr. Rasmussen is well known to many of you, who's been involved not only with StarTides from the very beginning, but actually for years before in terms of thinking through innovative approaches to civil military relations. The afternoon will be Puerto Rico. And we look forward to not only having Gilberto Guevara from the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust, but also a strong contingent from Gloria Vizcasillas, HR Palante, NGO. And followed that, there will be a logistics panel, Colonel George Topic. And one of the things I'll be dealing with is, in addition to the military logistics, is Ron Murata from USEN is intimately involved in this whole supply chain issue. And he's been warning us for months about the coming global supply chain crunch just by looking at the shipping. Then the exhibitors, next slide. So on Wednesday, the last day, Information Communications Technology panel will be led by Dr. Mahdi Hashemi of Mason. And then Dr. Kathy Lasky, who is the director of CRASC, will focus on creating digital opportunities. Originally, we had started off, this was a spin-off from the rural broadband, focused mainly, the first place where he came into focus was with the ISOC tribal session. Originally, we talked about closing the digital divide, and then people pointed out that that really has a negative connotation for the quote recipients of the large S, implies they're somehow secondary citizens. So we focus now on creating opportunities. But again, the opportunities are going to be very different for different communities. And so one needs to spend time at the beginning trying to understand what those are. In the afternoon, we'll have a panel, which could be very interesting. Mindy Fox has talked about solar cooking, and we're trying to expand it to see if we can find some people who are also familiar with the high efficiency thermal cook stoves as well, that actually turn out to gasify, take the volatile components in the materials, whether it's cow dung or whether it's coal or charcoal or briquettes, and burn that with virtually no pollution over your traditional wood stove. And finally, agriculture and food security. Mr. Iliad Terra of Alpha 8 has been doing a lot of work, particularly in underserved communities in the US, for example, food deserts in US urban centers. But there's also enormous amounts of interesting work being done, technologies to address what's becoming rapidly a global crisis and things like topsoil depletion. Next slide. So what we'd ask of all this is the attendance is free at the demo. It's an overly long URL. We'll try to condense it down. Could you, Kevin, or put it in chat? Go back. And then the exhibitors are offered.
And I'll add that later. I can't do it while I'm.
Get out.
That's what I will.
That's fine. Exhibitors are offered for $25, 2-minute video, 5 for 50, 10 for 100. And basically the videos will be of their own choosing, pre-recorded about their product, but also we will post it on the StarTides website, StarTides YouTube channel, and be indexed not only for the company, but for keywords and topics and things like that. Sponsors as well, if anyone's interested. And finally, I'd like to get the word out. Any of you who have networks who think they might be interested in this, please, please feel free to share. This is open to everyone. We hope next year to be back to a series, back to a real physical event in which the first 3 days will be at Mason and the last 2 days will be in Pentagon Center Court. So that concerns the demo. The other is, again, we welcome anyone to be participant in StarTides. The StarTides website, which I saw the chat was up there earlier, has opportunities to join. And so we're interested not only in projects, but also in participation. So that concludes my talk, and I'm more than happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Lynn, thanks so much. That's great. We had quite a few posts in the chat by Pat Scannell. So I'm going to ask Pat to join us first.
Fabulous. Yeah, thanks for the interest.
Absolutely, Lynn. And Kevin, I just do that out of habit. I hate to see an empty chat box. I was trying to see conversations where other folks might have similar interests. But on this last point, I'll go ahead and articulate it. Lynn, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I think it's critical, it's valuable. It seems to be right on point. I'm going to push back on you lovingly on one specific area,
Sure,
which is
absolutely.
This idea of sustainability. In my experience doing transformative, disruptive technologies across the coastal elite world, what I find is that when we interact with the rural communities, the traditional communities, we're highly disruptive of the cultures. In fact, you could argue that the technology automation and data centers and transportation hubs that we put into rural America have been directly contributing to deaths of despair and other things. So when you say sustaining and you talk about technology initiatives in rural communities, do we have do you anticipate that we will have disruptive effects on traditional values in those communities? And B, do we have a responsibility to those? And if I'm overstating this, feel free to just tell me to shut up and let other people speak. So.
No, you are so right in this. There's a great book. The title is something like the big truck is on Haiti, Haiti post-earthquake relief, and something like the big truck came by and stole my community or something. But the gist of it is there were water systems in Haiti that were basically trucks that came around, and for a few cent equivalents a day, people could buy water. And so after the earthquake, the international community in its enthusiastic largesse pours gazillions of bottles of water in there. And the immediate consequence, of course, was totally disrupted the indigenous water system that was operating. And so then after the international community lost interest and moved on to other things, they were left with essentially no more bottled water, and also the need to reconstruct the system that they had. So we try to be aware of this. For example, we were doing some work on getting transportation between Mombasa and Juba. So from the coast to into South Sudan. And the question was, how could we make use of indigenous transportation networks? I was talking when Ashraf Ghani was still the finance minister of Afghanistan. He made the comment one day that if I had enough explosives, I'm not sure what I would blow up first, USAID or World Bank. And of course, Well, he said, first of all, like 90% of the money that comes into the top of the kleptocracy funnel in Kabul never gets it to the people. But what happens basically is that one of the things that happens is that the international community needs drivers and needs interpreters. And so one of the unintended consequences is that the more educated people in Afghanistan, the doctors, the engineers, whatever, often wind up serving as interpreters and drivers. And so the net result is you actually undercut the capability of the country itself. So I think you're on an utterly critical point. I can't say I have an answer for it. I can only say we're aware of it and try to factor it into our planning. And this is why having trusted interlocutors on the ground is so crucial. So we have people on the ground who know what's happening and say, just stop this. You may think you're doing good, but you're actually completely barking up the wrong tree.
Just a quick follow on there. You responded with kind of an infrastructure example, and I know that was just one, the water. But I'm thinking of the stories I hear of how micro lending and the ability to work remotely through various gig economy apps and things like Uber have transformed opportunities for women around the world in developing countries. But the backlash, and I'm just remembering anecdotally a few different stories, is the women are empowered. They're the source of money. I think that the story in New Zealand was the new axes made an axe available to everybody, and the men who previously had the axes as prized rare possessions had that as their source of power and in the communities, right? So this re-engendering reinvigoration of gender equity, which we see in the West as a good thing, has these brutal consequences for traditional values that have generations old in some communities, where the men are now wandering around feeling useless in their communities. So I'm just saying that there's a hearts and minds aspect of this as well, in addition to the infrastructure.
You're absolutely right. And the flip side of it is, it's just the story about the digging wells, and you have cases where you point to the well in the village center, and now saves women the 4-hour treks they used to make to the stream to get the water. And then within a couple of weeks, the well is sabotaged, and in many cases sabotaged by the women, because they actually valued the time they were able to get away and socialize among themselves and whatever, and getting the water. So yeah, my view is sociology always trumps technology.
Yeah, one of the guys who used to work for me years ago went on a mission to go teach English in China. And he went to a village in central China and was trying to do kind of a Lady Bird Johnson, let's pick up the litter. And he was called into the into the village administrator's office and said, "You need to stop." He said, "What?" He said, "We throw stuff into the streets because don't you see what happens at the end of the day? We have a lot of elderly people who come up and sweep the streets. That's their job, right? You're taking their employment away, their purpose. And so you need to, let people throw stuff on the ground, right? Because you just don't understand, we've got a system here, it works, right? And we kind of took that into a commercial program when he got back, which, expanded to something we call client wellness, which was, if we're going to get involved with somebody, with a customer, let's make sure we don't do any harm. Let's make sure that they're better off than they were before we got involved with them. And if we have some reason to believe that it's not going to be good, then let's back off. Not everyone, not every, commercial relationship is made in heaven. So anyway, it was an interesting lesson that we were able to bring back and operationalize.
Yeah, absolutely. The not only are the laws of unintended consequences the locals don't realize, but there certainly are many more that we don't realize. So let me ask a question though. Has anyone seen what they would call a successful transformative event, if you will, that would really made things massively different? And perhaps you can't do it without breaking China or whatever the term of the countries is. But where one could say that there was a relatively smooth transition from a previous way of doing something to a new way of doing something that's generally benefited everybody.
I'll just throw in again, one of the guys I've worked with before is a guy named Willie Foote at Root Capital. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're up in Cambridge, but they do a lot of mid-market investing in Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa when there are cooperatives.
Right.
Let's say you're growing coffee. So the first thing you do after you grow coffee is you ship it upstream for someone else to wash the beans. And then you go from washing the beans to someplace else where they're going to roast the beans, and then they get packaged and so on and so forth. So the first thing that Willie's team does in a village like that, if they get involved, is let's put a well into the village and let's go ahead and help you wash the beans before they leave the village so that you can capture more of the value of your crop, eliminate that step, not have the young women have to go down the river to fetch water because now water's in the village, right? And you're going to increase prosperity, right, for the place where the crop is grown. And I was on, what I was retained to do is go talk to all of the investors, which were Rockefeller Foundation, Kresge Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, talk to the people who are giving them, money to support this work. And one of the family offices told me the reason that we give Willie the money is so that the young women can go to school. Not for the other reasons. It was because they're putting a well in the village and it's freeing up the time. They don't have to go fetch the water. That's our primary reason for wanting, and that's a second order effect. So, in discovering these kinds of things, those systems have a tendency to work, and they build into, I'll just finish by saying, they try to build in how to learn accounting so that, they're, better off, right, from a financial point of view, right, as, as a village, or community source business. So that's an example from my background. Coco, you're nodding your head. Is that something you have some familiarity with, some stories? I can't hear you, sir, if you're trying to talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lin Wells, for the introduction of all the programs. The programs are really interesting, and it really comes as well to the program which we tried to working on. We had developed to centralize the health system of the countries, so that which will help in the case of one patient. If one patient move from Goma, here I am, and be transferred in Kinshasa, when arrived in Kinshasa, so that the data, so that the physicians or the physician can get access to the data, to the medical record of all the patients. That will help to not only to centralize the data of the patient, but as well to decrease the money which the patient spend for the insurance, for example, or to decrease the number of the examinations, because when the patient moves to one hospital, the hospital A to hospital B and C, he has everywhere to restart again to make checkup. So that will help on that. So, but in the same way, we are working on the irrigation system, which has to be used on the irrigations, but to be automatized and to be controlled, to let engineer who can control the irrigation of town A to town B, and to make everything all in one. In that case, it helped too much to find out that stakeholders which are working in the health system, in IT system, in agriculture system, or in geographical traceability system, all of them, you found out that just one person is an expert here and there. So, or even if we teach our people, they cannot interact on the same times and the same day and succeed. So we share the experience between us, between the education system, health system, agriculture system, far and far with some local incubator system. Actually, right now, I'm planning to set up a workshop. By 4 months, we have to organize some workshop like that, which will help us, for me to help people to understand that the digitalizations is not only the using of the computers, is not only to use the telephone system. They have to understand that all the devices have to share information, and once they share information, we will gain in time, we will gain in expertise, we will gain in productions. But our politic is what? Our politic is to teach people to understand it and to do it and to maintain it, for us to import less the expertise. That's what we tend to do. Thank you very much, Mr. Kevin, to give us this opportunity to experiment our thinking.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned the Kibera effect. What's that? I know what Kibera is, the town, the slum, but what is the Kibera?
The incubator, there is one incubator here in Goma, by Kivu, calling Kivu Entrepreneurship, Kivu Entrepreneurs Association. Incubator. Enterprise incubators.
Okay, so you know incubator, right, Lynn? So that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Next, Jeanette Stewart has put some thoughtful comments in the chat. Jeanette, please join us.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So I'm coming from a nonprofit called Translation Commons, and as you can understand, we deal with languages. So we have been working with UNESCO for the International Year of Indigenous Languages, and of course, in January, we start the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. And we have been talking with many indigenous communities about digitizing their language. So where our initiative is within the language technology of how to digitize the language so it is enabled digitally, the scripts and so on. But one of the things that we found out is that our advisory board feels that speaking with the communities is not as easy as we thought. And Lynn made a mention of this. They don't trust us, but also we tend to not be able to convey our messages because culturally we're coming from an action-oriented community. We have a problem, this is how we solve it. And a lot of these communities are not at that stage that they're open to receive a solution for many reasons. One of the reasons we found is they're more interested in sharing with us and talking to us. They want to get things off their chest. They want us to understand how they feel. And of course, you've given many examples of how the information can be lost. Also, one of the things that we found is that we need to have trained anthropologists in our team. Because when we speak with them, we can give them the solution, but how they're going to implement it has to be done in their way. And finally, the last point I want to make on this is that as part of the end of the International Year of Indigenous Languages, Mexico had a high-level event for the year. And there were thousands of participants and many countries, members, representatives. And the basic slogan that was decided that has to be ingrained in everything that the decade does is nothing about us without us. Nothing, that will not involve the communities themselves. And to do that, we need to have trained people. And that's what I wanted to share. So we need to enlarge the group from technologists and politicians also to anthropologists and linguists and language technologists.
I think one of the things that really interested me about the vaccination rates in the, I think it was Navajo community, was that they were actually quite high once the vaccines became available. And one of the reasons for that is that the tribe chose to vaccinate first the native speakers of the Navajo language. And that just showed, that the leaders of the tribe had confidence in the vaccines to vaccinate these treasured people. And it had an enormous flow-down effect.
Yep. Jeanette, thank you for joining us. David Perlman, you had some thoughts. Please join us. Maybe David is not with us. If you do.
Oh, he's on. He's just muted.
I'm okay with the comments, but don't need to chat is what he put in. So there we go. Anyone else with thoughts, comments, ideas for Lynn, StarTides? Ben, are you joining us to join?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a thought is this, one of the unique aspects is not speeding up the mess of traditional or even crippled supply chains, for example, but looking at novel augmentations and novel engagement and novel restoration of services is a unique mission, because the ordinary response systems tend to focus on the restoration of the existing operating activity. And it would seem that StarTides has a mission not of that could be an ephemeral response, ephemeral condition, and therefore might engage novel notions, novel ideas of operating infrastructures, say supply chains.
So that's very interesting. Yeah, we tend to think in terms of the CRASC and the PCI engagement as the more enduring, and that StarTides is a knowledge resource that can be brought to bear on a problem, which could be ephemeral, or it could be, people choose to join the long-term solution. But you're right, it does have that option.
And one of the organizations that I'm likely to introduce you to, Lynn, is ICRISAT, the International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, that's
Wow.
based in outside. I was teaching at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. So this is out on the outskirts of Hyderabad. And you know that seed vault that they have near the Arctic Circle, right? Well, they have a seed vault, but their area of specialization is the plants and the seeds that will grow in the most inhospitable places, okay?
Right.
The least amount of water, the least likely, I mean, these are the seeds you'd want after a nuclear winter,
Right.
So, I think that on your agriculture part, they have a lot of technology that's actually very simple, right? That's not, like they have a way to deliver irrigation that's basically delivering into a, they slope land so it goes into a circle. And it creates a place for the water to gather that isn't, has very little exposure to air. It's deep, but it's not, wide like a body of water.
Right.
And then they have a solar way to redistribute it back out to the, to the crops that are around it. Right. It's very, it's very interesting, and they do as much low tech as they can. So, but it means that there's not a lot of, material. So I think that I'll get Jane Pataka Kane in touch with you. They may not be able to participate in this, but they have made millet their hero crop for the next, what is it? I guess for the next 5 years. And here, in North America, we would know that as birdseed. Okay. In India, it's roti, it's bread. It's actually it's a substitute for what we would have as wheat. And let me tell you, if you want to grow a crop at home where you can make your own bread, right? A lot easier to grow millet than it is to grow, if you've ever spilled any birdseed around your feeder, than wheat. Okay. So it's just something that I think you would find.
Wow,
I think it would be a good addition to your agriculture unit.
There's another aspect that's going on here I didn't mention, which is CASTLE, the Kwajalein Atoll Sustainability Lab. And the Marshalls are one of the island nations were existentially threatened by sea level rise due to things like saltwater intrusion into the water tables and things like that. And so Eric Rasmussen, I think, is known to many of you here in PCI, and some folks at the University of Hawaii and also the Indo-Pacific Command are looking at developing a laboratory for understanding what the potential for, we say sustainability, it's almost survivability of the of these low-lying island nations is. So it's a flip side of the exceedingly arid to the it's not so much exceedingly wet, but exceedingly water threatened.
Sure. 100%. I know that, what is it? I forgot what the name of it is. It's off the coast. It's in between, not Micronesia. It's like 1,000 different islands. Where's the Marshall Island? Is it the Marshall Island?
Is Melanesia or?
I don't know. But it's a whole.
Marshalls are kind of in the Central Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole group of islands that make up one nation.
Right. All right.
So I want to call it the Marshall Islands, but I don't know what that's the right name.
Well, you've got the Marshalls, the Gilberts, they've all changed names. So several of them had, anyway, many of them fall into this loose category of COFA, the Compact of Free Association.
Exactly.
It used to be the Church Territories of the Pacific Islands. Anyway, it's a long story.
But the geographic feature of just barely peeking up out of the ocean, right? Because it's a mountain formation in the ocean is, they're the most threatened at the moment.
Yeah, but it's also deals with the Seychelles and places in many areas. Yeah.
So Lynn, if you were going to summarize the kind of person that has thrived in Star Tides as a member, not from a discipline point of view, but from an attitudinal point of view, the people who are most ready, what would that person be like?
Curious, eclectic, iconoclastic. The Dave Warner, who's been an anchor tenant of this since the very beginning. I mean, his usual sign off instead of thanks or best is iterated will. Okay. So you're virtually, and the other part of it is save the willing first. So the point is, we do best with folks who are willing to explore it. Something anyone said is, you don't look for out of the box thinking. There is no box.
Good. All right, that's a great way to think about it. Maylin, I see you're still with us. Would value having you share a few things. You're going to host the first day of this. What is your thoughts about Star Tides and how PCI members should be involved? Do you have any thinking?
Hi. Yes,
there she is.
Walking, so listening with great interest. I think the Star Tides network is.
Oh, you froze up, Maylin.
Is so incredibly powerful. All of the difficult problems. I will stop my. So we face many challenges. But I think Jeanette really summed it up when she said, not about us without us. And so a people-centered approach is what I think Star Tides and CRAS together with PCI, we are all pushing forward on that together. And that will give us everybody being involved in what the future will be. And I will my final words are, the future we want is going to be fueled by friendship. And if we don't remember that, we will get the future we don't want to live in, or that will not be what our children deserve. Back to you, Kevin.
No, thank you, Maylin. And Lynn, why don't you give us your concluding comments, and then Chris, again, a preview of what's coming up.
So actually, could I do something for about 2 minutes to share?
Absolutely.
All right, so basically, this will not be what Star Tides will be like in a week and a half, but the Singapore Defense Technology Summit is going on the 12th to the 15th of October. And I'd like to show the intro video that they have. It's about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, only to show you what an eye-watering video presentation could look like.
Okay, before you do that, David Perlman wants to know, and I think some of my members in my universe want to know the price list for exhibitors and sponsors. Are you still accepting exhibitors and sponsors?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so everybody listening to this, right? Lynn wants to take your call and take your money. Go ahead, show us a video.
Okay, so I will share here. Let's see if this works. Hopefully my audio will not crash. All right. So you should see a picture of something that looks like an entry hall to a conference center.
Mhm.
All right, let's see if this works.
Yes.
Okay, this will be a short video. Can you see the video?
I'm Dr. Iriti Dan, the Executive Vice President for Research and Development of Rafael Advanced Defense System. I'm an astrophysicist in my background and passionate about technologies. The upcoming Tech Summit is going to be a very interesting event with a wide range of speakers. In my session, we will discuss what is next beyond terror, cyber, and pandemics. I will be happy to share with you my thoughts about the future technologies that will impact our life. We will address the pros and cons of those trends. For example, bioconvergence that combine biology and engineering. We are living in an exciting era. This is the time of technology, and it's going to affect each and every one of us. Stay tuned for more.
Geez, I want to go, actually, that was not the video I wanted to show. They have they just have an introduction to this thing, but let me not take more time. But essentially what happens is this is set up like an auditorium.
Mhm.
And essentially the rooms over here at the side for each event, you can enter the different rooms. You can sign up for the panels. There is an exhibit hall where all of the exhibitors can, you can attend their booths at your choice and then play the videos later. It's really, again, it gets so far away from the usual, okay, here's a collection of Zoom calls that
Yeah.
I just find it really, really exciting. And I'd share the link, but it's a personal link for each individual. But anyway, it's really quite an exciting concept. Stop sharing.
Okay. Well, Lynn, thanks for being with us today. And I think this is the first time that I've truly understood the breadth of StarTIDES, this particular presentation. So very useful and very enlightening. And I will be in touch with you, me personally.
I still look forward to it, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, so, because I think that we'll have some member companies that might want to, participate in my universe. And Chris, what's coming up?
So again, here we have on the schedule upcoming events, calls, along with a few others in the works that we're working out the final logistics of. And so next one is 2 weeks from today with Gary Bowles and the next rules of work. So hope to see everyone there. And thank you for joining today.
Thank you. And Lynn, you've got a request from Coco for your charts.
Absolutely. You have, I think Chris has the charts, and please feel free to share with anyone. And Coco, could you put your email in the chat? I'll send with you particularly.
All right. Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
Yeah, you can send me a direct email, Coco. You should have mine from the invite. So thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.